A retired couple moving to Texas, Central Texas specifically, is going to spend about 30 to 40% less than that same couple if they were living in somewhere like Miami or San Diego. And don't even get me started on how expensive it would be if they were living in San Francisco or New York. And that's not hype. You can look on Google, you can do AI searches, and you can find this data for yourself. These are true numbers. So in this video, I'm going to walk you through a retirement guide that's grounded in data, not in marketing or crazy headlines that people are looking for to click online. Now, starting it out, most people have heard, hey, Texas is great for retirees. It's cheaper here. But what a lot of them don't realize, because yeah, we don't have income tax, and that includes your retirement income and things like that. But you hear about property taxes and people freak out and think that Texas property taxes are really, really expensive. Well, property taxes, housing, and insurance are three of the main reasons that retiring to Texas is actually cheaper. Now, I'm not going to lose you on the property tax thing. I promise I'm going to explain that, but I've got a few things to talk about first. But the reality of it is not everything is amazing in Texas. Like there's issues. I've been here for 50 years and there's issues here, right? So if you're looking at headlines and not digging into the details, you may miss things that people are talking about like droughts, water bills, access to medical care, things like that that for a retiree can be really, really important. Oh, and if you don't know me yet, my name's Chris. I'm a realtor in the Austin area. Just so you know, if you're moving to this area, you might want to reach out to somebody who's been here for a while and who understands these things. So let's jump into this relocation checklist. The first thing we're going to talk about is housing and the cost of housing. So right now, the median home price in the Austin metro area is sitting right around $439,000. Now, recent average closed sales that I've been seeing are closer to $556,000, and that's after a small drop year over year that we've had the last couple of years. So the market's cooled off a little bit, but again, that's kind of what you can expect to pay if you're looking in Austin metro proper. If you're getting outside of that area, it's going to be a little bit cheaper. Now, again, I started out talking about Miami and San Diego. Miami metro is around $650,000 average, and San Diego's pushing $800,000. And again, not even going to talk about places like San Francisco or New York. Don't even want to get into those crazy prices. That alone is a 30 to 35% savings just on housing. That's before we start talking about property taxes and insurance. So just for housing in general, Texas is way cheaper than one of these other, more traditional retirement settings. And I know, again, you've seen headlines now for years how crazy expensive Austin's gotten and, affordability's down in Austin and all this other stuff. But again, we got to go beyond the headlines, right? We got to look at the median because you can get a really, really nice home, brand new homes even, for at the median price or below. And yes, it's true. There's parts of Austin that have gotten really, really expensive. Now, those are the trophy listings. That's the luxury lifestyle, and that market has gone up a lot. But if that's what you're looking for, compare those listings directly to the similar type listings in San Diego and Miami. You're still going to see a massive savings in what your money can get you. There was recently some clients from San Diego. They sold a condo in San Diego and moved to a place in Kerrville, which is northwest of San Antonio, nice little hill country town, and bought a nice house, a little bit of land, for $200,000 less than that little condo that they had in San Diego. And the thing that they valued even more than that $200,000 savings was the lifestyle that they inherited, being out in the hill country, being close to all these hiking trails, and just the general laid back style of the Texas hill country. Again, price savings is one thing, but saving on that lifestyle can be an absolute game changer as you move into retirement. Now, we got the big savings out of the way with the cost of housing. So let's talk about property taxes. Like I said, everybody, the highlights you see, the headlines you see, they're all talking about how expensive Texas property taxes are. And yeah, Texas property taxes are higher than a lot of places around the United States. The average in Texas right now is about 1.68% of the value of your home. Now, I want to point out real quick the value of your home. So if you're starting with a home that for all practical purposes is the same in two different locations, but your home is $200,000 less, like I was just telling you about the Kerrville couple. Okay, the amount, even though that percentage of 1.68 might be higher because the value of your home is less, that's going to make that tax bill less. But here's the real game changer. If you're over 65 and you file this home as your homestead, meaning that you live there for more than 6 months out of the year, you qualify for an exemption and a tax ceiling. What that means is that your school district taxes essentially freeze at the amount when you move in. So while appraisals keep going up, the tax bill doesn't go up quite as fast. Now, you will continue to get additional taxes for roads and things like that, but the school district fees are a large part of your tax bill. And when you're over 65, that part being locked in means that large largest part of your tax bill is not going to continue to increase. And with clients that are coming and moving in, I'm seeing them get into nice homes for, a total tax bill of around $5,000 a year. But what I've seen over the last couple of years, in most cases, those taxes haven't really gone up, especially if they're over 65. And in a lot of cases, they've even dropped because Texas has done some additional funding and moving some things around with taxes that has actually helped them out. So again, $5,000 in total taxes when you put it like that, as opposed to 1.68%, which is again high for other states. When you look at it as a total amount of cash, $5,000 really isn't terrible. And while I know in California, the taxes are frozen after you buy them that first year, but if you look at Florida, again, Miami specifically, there's no caps on those taxes and they're continuing to go up. So, yes, while as a percentage of your home value, taxes are higher in Texas, when you take into account the fact that home values are typically less and you get these caps that can be put in place that really restrict how much your taxes can go up, the taxes here can end up being, if not cheaper, about the same for retired people. And in retirement, what most people are looking for is that predictable outlay of cash. So if you can keep those numbers predictable from year to year, that's a lot of peace of mind that you get if you're moving here to Texas instead of one of the other states. Now, let's jump into insurance. And if you're looking to relocate out of Florida, insurance in Texas is really going to make you smile, even though it's not the cheapest place in the nation that you can get insurance. It's still way better than Florida. The average homeowner policy in Miami runs about $5,300 a year. And I've had clients tell me that they've had it as high as $6,000 or $7,000. And statewide in Florida, the average is about $5,600. In Texas, the average is about $4,000. But here in the Hill Country, it's somewhere usually between $2,800 and $3,000, just depending on exactly where it is. Now, those numbers have gone up in Texas, and the big drivers behind that are hailstorms, which we get, and also we've had a little bit of wildfire issue here lately, so premiums are going up because of that. But in the Hill Country, the likelihood of a hurricane hitting you is extremely low, as opposed to Florida, where I'm not going to go out and say that it's a high probability of getting hit by a hurricane, but let's at least say that it's a little bit lower than living in the Hill Country in Texas. I've got clients that were recently living in the Tampa area. They were paying about $6,500 a year for that property tax. And when they moved out here to the Hill Country, that same level of coverage dropped to about $2,800. Now, if you're doing the math, that's almost $300 a month, close to $4,000 a year. If you take that over 10 years, that's a huge savings in retirement. And I think at this point, you might be seeing how retiring in Texas could be a good idea, but let's keep moving. Now, let's jump to the number 4 thing here. Let's talk about healthcare. And obviously, in retirement, well, for everybody, healthcare is important, but you usually don't think about it until you need it. But if you're coming out to the Hill Country, you do need to have an idea of where your major medical care is and where the hospitals are, because again, you can travel an hour, hour and a half for just a regular appointment, but if you need something emergency, you're going to need to be within 20 or 30 minutes of a major hospital. And because you've got larger hospitals in places like Burnett, Marble Falls, and Kerrville, most of your Hill Country towns are going to be within about a 20 or 30-minute drive of those. But if you get too remote, again, if you get west of Fredericksburg or even north of Fredericksburg, out on the other side of Llano towards San Saba, you're going to have a longer drive for that healthcare. So just be careful about where you're looking. And have an idea, if you're moving out and you need specialist care now, look online and find where those care facilities are. Because if you move to somewhere like Llano, but your specialized care is down in San Antonio, okay, you might end up with an hour and a half, hour and 45-minute, 2-hour drive to get there. Or if you need specialized VA hospitals, again, San Antonio and Austin are going to be your best options for that. But you need to know where that specialized care is, and then you can kind of do your house shopping around that. All right, let's jump into number 5. Let's talk about water and utilities. And look, Texas has a lot of different natural features, but about half of Texas is desert. And when you're in a desert or on the edge of a desert, there's years when you don't get very much rainfall. We do have droughts here. It's a real thing. And if you're going to be rural, chances are you're going to end up on a well or you're going to have rainwater collection. Okay, personally, I have rainwater collection, love it, never have an issue with it, but I'm not too far west. But if you have a well and we're in a drought and that well was dug, I don't know, 20 or 30 years ago, it may not be very deep. And then during that drought, you could lose water. We've had it here in the Dripping Springs area, just west of Austin. I know several people who've had to redig their wells. Okay. But that's going to come at a pretty big cost. You're talking maybe $20,000 or $30,000 to redig that well. So Ahead of time, before you buy the house, make sure you're checking on how deep those wells are, if they've had issues, what kind of production they're putting out. These are things that you need to understand ahead of time. And like I said, rainwater collection is awesome. I love it. But if you're somebody that needs a plush yard and you want to have an acre garden and you want to do all these things with wildlife and livestock and things like that, you're probably going to need a backup water source over just that rainwater collection, because you're really not going to be able to collect enough rainwater, even in normal years of rainfall. You're not going to be able to collect enough rainwater to keep a nice plush garden, and a nice yard and things like that. It's just not going to happen. So if you want those things, you would ideally find a property that either had some type of municipal water supply or a well in addition to that rainwater catchment. But overall, another good thing about the area is utilities aren't that bad here. Outside of your major metros, especially if you're west of Austin, you're going to be a part of PEC, which is Pedernales Electric Cooperative. That's the electrical provider out here. And most people, their electric bills are going to average somewhere between $120 and maybe $200 a month. And that's year round. Obviously, in the winter, that number is going to be a little bit lower, especially if you're heating with something other than electric. But if you're just figuring $120 to $200 a month for your electric bill by itself, you're going to be okay. If you're going to have municipal water on top of that, there's going to be an additional fee, especially if you like, again, a really nice yard or a big garden. So you can adjust your budget accordingly for that. But your water bill is not going to be all that much different than where you are now, if you don't have a well or rainwater catchment. But the big takeaway here is just make sure you're budgeting for it. Again, if you want to irrigate a yard, you're probably going to add at least another $100 to your normal water bill. And if you have a big yard, it could be $200. But again, as long as you're budgeting, you're going to be fine. All right, the sixth thing we hadn't talked about yet, but we've been talking a lot about money and the cost of moving to Texas. Okay. But you can accommodate for that. You can budget around it. Those are things that can be fixed. But the big thing that you can't really budget around is a community fit. And in retirement, if you're retiring to a different state, that can be really, really important, finding a community that you feel a part of. Now, the great thing is if you're moving out here, there's a ton of things to get involved with. There's a huge art scene, there's a huge music scene, you've got outdoors, and you've got groups that do things like hiking and gardening and things like that. So for just about any activity that you enjoy doing, there's more than likely a group of people out here that you can insert yourself into and have things in common with. But keep in mind, the further you get out of the major metro areas and the smaller the town is that you're moving to, those social opportunities kind of get a little bit smaller, right? You don't have as many people around, so you're still going to have the ability to plug in, but those groups aren't going to be quite as big. They may not be as vibrant, and the pace of life overall is just going to be a little bit slower. So if you're not okay with that, you might want to look in an area that's closer into Austin or closer in San Antonio or something like that. But if you're looking for that slower lifestyle, yeah, absolutely. Get into the hill country towns and start exploring, and seeing, okay, what things are available for me in places like Blanco, Fredericksburg, Johnson City, Marble Falls. And if you're torn between a couple of places at this point, if you're coming up on retirement or you're already retired, what I tell people a lot of times is rent an Airbnb in one town for a month. See how you like it. Meet the people, see what there is to do, drive around, you get a chance to feel out the hill country. And then you're retired anyway. Go to another town, rent an Airbnb there, get a feel for that place. However many towns you think might be interesting to you, and it doesn't have to be a month, you can go for a week and you can get a good feel for a place in a week's time. But go on vacation and treat that vacation like, hey, this is where we might be moving. Let's see what's available to do there. Let's see how we like the community. Now, just to reiterate and take a look at this checklist as a side-by-side comparison, let's look at the things that we've talked about so far. All right, so when you're looking at the Austin Hill Country versus Miami versus San Diego, again, housing, you're looking at potentially about $30,000 a year in the Austin Hill Country. Miami, about $45,000. San Diego, about $48,000. So again, that's the biggest cost savings that you're going to realize. Taxes, again, Austin is fairly similar to the other two, but for the most part, they're going to be frozen or at least more stable. Now, San Diego is going to be the one where it's not going to change, but that Miami one, that's going to be a rising cost. Insurance-wise, again, Austin makes a lot of sense from an insurance perspective. Utilities and waters are fairly stable across the board. San Diego, because it's in California, is going to be a little bit higher. And then when you look at healthcare, and this is adjusted for the cost of living in the area, healthcare is going to be cheaper in the Austin Hill Country as well. So when you're looking at that total cost of living per year in that area, just outside Austin and out into the Austin Hill Country, you're looking at potentially $20,000 a year in savings. And again, that's where that 30 to 35% savings it's coming from. It is a huge, huge savings. And again, when you're in a fairly fixed retirement income part of your life, $20,000 a year is a major, major savings. And like I said, Texas isn't always cheaper. And there's other states that it's cheaper to retire to. But if you've been seeing the headlines and, oh, Texas property taxes are so high and everybody's leaving Texas and all this other stuff, if you're just looking at the headlines, you're being lied to. Reach out to somebody like myself who can actually tell you the truth about what it's like to live in Texas and give you an idea of what the numbers are like, run through those with you and help you find out. You may be happier somewhere else, but you could be really happy here as well.